What's going on, Orange Nation? This is Neil Adler with another episode of Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. Today is Thursday. Yep, it's Thursday. This week's like flying by. It always seems like a shorter week for me when I come back from seeing my kid and I'm traveling Monday or even Tuesday, and it's like, oh my God, I'm back home. It's like the week's almost half over. Anyway, hope everyone's having a great week. We're going to stick with Syracuse basketball and recruiting stuff today because I just feel like it. So, talked on Syracuse Central a couple of times about Jordan Smith Jr., priority recruit for Syracuse in the 2026 class. And the 2026 class is going to come more and more into focus this fall as more high school seniors announce their verbal commitments. And Syracuse has been on a handful of guys, which I've talked about and will continue to follow, provide as much intel as I can. So, Jordan, the reason I'm bringing him up today is one of the analysts on 24/7 Sports logged a prediction for Jordan and his recruitment, projecting that he's going to pick Duke. It is what it is. Duke has been kind of like the rumored leader, quote unquote, for Smith for a while. These predictions aren't always accurate. Certainly, if you see multiple of them, that's not a good sign. The guy that did the prediction, who I actually chat with from time to time, Colby, from 24/7 Sports, he's super plugged into the DMV. So I'm not saying Jordan's going to pick Duke, but it's definitely a good sign for them and not a great sign for his other finalists. And Jordan's got a top six of Duke, Syracuse, Georgetown, Indiana, Arkansas, and Kentucky. And as we've talked about on Syracuse Central, Syracuse has been pursuing Smith for as long as anyone. They offered him in early May of 2023, so over 2 years now. He unofficially visited Syracuse last September of last year. I've been told multiple times that Syracuse coaches are trying to get him on campus for another visit, whether it's unofficial or official, presumably official. And it could be after the basketball season starts because he is not expected to sign with a team until the regular signing period, which is next April. The early signing period is next month in like mid-November. But so if he's signing next April, that gives Syracuse and other suitors more time. And he unofficially visited Duke last weekend and officially visited Duke, I think, last fall. He recently took an official to John Calipari in Arkansas. He's visiting, I believe, officially visiting Kentucky this weekend. He has visited Georgetown, if I'm not mistaken. So look, I would take the field over Syracuse, but I still feel like Syracuse has a shot here. I think the main thing is the one thing we just got to keep in mind is that Syracuse is kind of, I don't want to say their staff is in limbo or in flux because I want to respect them. Those guys, they played at my alma mater and, but at the same time, they stunk last year, and if they're not good this year, we could see a head coaching change. We could see, a full staff change. I don't want that. I like all the guys on the staff. I'm not saying we're buddies. I don't know any of them, super close or anything like that. But I mean, good peoples. Coach Strawn, Coach Griff, Alex Klein, Dan Engelstad, and obviously Red, among others. But guys like Jordan Smith Jr. Now, obviously, if he's gonna sign with a team in the regular signing period next April, this doesn't come into play as much because he could see how Syracuse does this year. But other guys, if they want to sign in November, and that's just when the season's starting, they might want to not want to pick Syracuse because they want to see how the staff does and if there's going to be a change. Because some of these top guys that are considering Syracuse another, like a Jordan Smith Jr., like a Duron Rippey Jr., etc. They're picking, if they were to pick Syracuse, I mean, yeah, it's a big brand and they play in the ACC, and I'm sure NIL is somewhat competitive and rev share and all that stuff. But they're picking it because they're close with the staff. That's why Kai and Anthony went there, and Sadiq White and Donnie Freeman, and I've talked about this before. So if this, God forbid, this team is not good and there's a change in staff, that would be problematic for guys they're trying to get currently in 2026. So that's kind of what I feel like is working against Syracuse a little bit. But with a guy like Jordan Smith, because he is playing the sign in the regular period next spring, maybe, Syracuse has a good season and he sees that and everything's all dandy. But, also these guys are going to look at, the culture of the team, the environment, student life, player development, NBA, track record, the NIL rev share stuff, and certainly roster construction and playing time. So, again, if I had to pick, I probably would say I feel like Jordan's going to end up at Duke, but I don't think it's a slam dunk, especially with one projection. If there's more and more coming in, and plus that's a pretty early projection if he's playing to sign next April. But we'll see. This stuff ebbs and flows. Jordan Smith is the number 2 player in the class, according to a couple recruiting services. 5-star shooting guard out of Team Takeover in the EYBL and an All-American at St. Paul VI Catholic High School in Chantilly, Virginia, in the DMV, where I'm located. And as we've talked about on Syracuse Central, the Orange staff has deep, deep roots and connections and relationships with both Team Takeover and St. Paul VI. So, look, they've got a shot. Not encouraging news to see a projection for another team, but this stuff happens. It happens. So I'm not saying Syracuse is going to win out, and I'm also not saying that Duke isn't going to win out. That was like double, triple negatives. If I had to pick a team, regardless of this projection from Colby at 24/7 Sports, I would pick Duke just based on what I've heard or what I've read or whatever. But again, any of those teams in his top 6, I could see him picking. I do feel like Syracuse needs to get him up there again because he's visiting some of these other teams officially, and it'd be good to get him up there for an official visit. All right, we're going to move on to one other recruiting thing, and then we'll get to some other stuff. So in the 2026 class, I've talked about, guys I think are like top targets for Syracuse. And again, this could ebb and flow, and I might not be 100% accurate, but, I have sources, I talk to people, whatever. And so Duron Rippey Jr., Jordan Smith Jr., and then a couple other guys. Talked about Dakari Spear, who's officially visited already, Asher Elson, who visits this weekend, Vaughn Carvalho, and, keep in mind a guy like MJ Madison and Alex Costanzo, although I'm not sure what's doing with those guys. And then possible reclass guys like Clyde Walters or Anderson Diaz, both 2027s that have been rumored potentially to look at reclassing to 2026. They're both at Overtime Elite right now. The Orange staff, Alan Griffin's been in for them at the Overtime Elite Pro Day. I think I don't remember if that might have been last month. Yeah. Anyway, so we'll see. But Vaughn Carvalho is a 4-star wing/small forward from Wisconsin. He's playing his senior year at CIA Bella Vista in Phoenix, which is part of the EYBL Scholastic. A couple other guys on the CIA Bella Vista, which was a really good team last year, one of the top teams in the country, holds offers from Syracuse, but I don't know how heavy Syracuse is with those guys. One is Paul Asarui, which is he's a 5-star big man in 2027, and then 4-star point guard Miles Sadler. I don't think Syracuse is involved with him these days. 4-star guard Rakeem Green, again the same thing, and then those are both 2026s, along with Vaughn, and then another 2026 4-star center Elio Diom. He recently committed to West Virginia. So anyway, my point here is that there was a report in 24/7 Sports by a really good analyst who's way more plugged in than me, nationally at least. And the report talked about Vaughn. He's officially visited Xavier, and I think he's got a couple more visits coming up. And according to that report, it said that Syracuse is out of the mix for Vaughn. And that might be true. It might not be. And again, the national analyst who covered that is a good dude and knows recruiting on a national scale way more than me. So, but, I know Syracuse recruiting. Anyway, I talked to a source that has really good knowledge of Syracuse recruiting, and I'll leave it at that, saying that the Syracuse staff is still trying to get Vaughn up for an official visit. He was supposed to visit in late September, the same weekend that Rippey did, and it had to get postponed. And at the time, and I broke that story, and it was not because, at least according to my source, because there wasn't interest between both parties. It was more like a scheduling thing, and he's at a new school out in Phoenix, blah, blah, blah. Then you see this 24/7 sports report about Syracuse out of the mix. I'm told Syracuse is still trying to get him on campus. I'm not saying Syracuse is going to win out for Vaughn, not in the least. And I'm not calling that 24/7 Sports Report like false because, I'm respecting other journalists, but I'm just telling you what I'm hearing, okay? So we'll see. Obviously, if he goes into decision-making mode later this month or into the next month and plans to sign early, and, that's not a good sign. But we'll see. We'll see. Like I said, I'm hearing that Syracuse is still trying to get him on campus for an official visit. The early signing period is a little over a month from now. Vaughn took an unofficial to Syracuse last November, was offered there shortly thereafter. Syracuse has been in for him on the AAU circuit. He played EYBL with Team Hero and probably other showcases, this spring and summer. We'll see. We'll see. He's a fast rising prospect, top 30, top 40 guy. Good player. So we'll see what happens. All right. So as I mentioned, I think it was yesterday on Syracuse Central, JJ Starling and Donnie Freeman were at the ACC tip-off and been doing a lot of media interviews, and so is Coach Red, ahead of the season. And I talked yesterday about I think it was yesterday, I don't know, the days meld together, about JJ and his hand, and he's good to go. But he also had some thoughts about the team and their NCAA tournament chances. And I guess the easiest way to put it is he's high on this team. And of course he's supposed to be. I mean, that's not like anything surprising. But he said some interesting things. He was saying, look, if you were at practice, and I'm not at practice because I don't live in Syracuse. If you were at practice, not me, like just people generally speaking, you know what I'm talking about. This team is working hard and everyone's pushing each other, and there's a lot of talent on this team, and guys are in the gym busting their hump, not just, playing basketball, but in the weight room, strength, getting stronger and taking care of themselves. It just like he sounded really, I mean, guys say that every year. I don't know. Something's just like different. I feel like this team's going to be pretty good. I'm not saying they're going to win the ACC and be a top 3 seed in the tournament or anything like that, but it'd be nice if they just got back to the NCAA tournament. And on paper, this is a nice looking team. There are areas that I'm concerned about, but again, we'll see how it all shakes out when they actually start playing games in less than a month. And Starling said another cool thing. He said that he was asked about Kyan Anthony, and he said, Kyan works really hard, and he's just one of the guys, and he just, he's asking questions, and he said him and Kyan and JJ have gotten really tight, and it's cool to hear that stuff about Kyan because, look, his dad is a famous alum and is just famous because he's an NBA Hall of Famer. There's obviously some family pressure there in terms of Kyan coming in, but I don't think he's putting a lot of pressure on himself because even though he's playing for his dad's alma mater, he's going to carve out his own niche at Syracuse. And I don't think he's a one and done because I don't know how much playing time he's going to get this year. But he had a great senior year at Lehigh, and he was injured for part of the year, but then he had a great senior year, played in some All-America showcases. He earned that top 30, 35 national ranking. He's not mellow, but he was a good player in high school, top 10 shooting guard as well. So anyway, it's good to hear all the guys talking positively about Kyan. I'll be curious to see how much run he gets, and Sadiq White and some of the other freshmen. But yeah, if you had to ask me, I do think on paper what they have, and if they execute and come together as a unit and they get better on defense and they're solid rebounding, I think they're going to score well, whether it's in the half-court sets and transition. We'll see about the three-point shooting. But yeah, it's an athletic, talented roster, and it's just a lot of new faces. 11 of 13, friends. That's a lot. 6 transfers, 5 freshmen, incoming freshmen. That's a lot. But their 2 returnees were arguably their 2 best players last year, in Freeman and Starling. So I'm optimistic that they're going to make the tournament. Melo said earlier this week that they're going to the Final Four. I don't know about all that jazz, but we'll see. We'll see how Red coaches this team. But it's an intriguing roster, and it's a challenging but manageable schedule. And yeah, we'll see. But speaking of that, I'm going to wrap up here. I'm going to talk about Tyler Betsy, and I know I brought him up a little bit in the past, and Donnie Freeman talked about Tyler and said he's like an X factor, or he's like a sleeper on the team, so to speak. And Tyler's an interesting prospect. He's what, 6'8", 6'9", hybrid forward, wing, whatever you want to call it. Like I said, I think yesterday or earlier this week on Syracuse Central, he was a 4-star top 50 recruit in the 2024 class. Syracuse pursued him for a while. He went to St. Thomas More, which is a really good prep program in Connecticut. And there was even talk about a visit, according to some interviews, but obviously he ended up going in other directions. And he was at Cincinnati last year, and he didn't play a ton. I think he played like 10, 11 minutes a game, didn't have a lot of production. But that's typical for a lot of freshmen, unless they're like Cooper Flagg or Carmelo Anthony or Kevin Durant. Top 50 national prospects, some might carve out a larger role in their first year, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them don't. So I'm not basing much on last year with him. I was high on him when Syracuse was recruiting him, and I was covering him as a recruit. He just seemed lefty. He just seemed like he strong frame, athletic, can defend, can shoot the three. Not necessarily like he's not going to be. I don't think he's going to be like Nate King shooting 44% from three, but just not talked about as much in the offseason as some of their other portal gets, namely Kings and Nate George, the point guard from Georgia Tech. And even like William Kyle, the who's going to be a senior, and he was a transfer from UCLA, big man, athletic big man. But then Betsy also came along a little later in the cycle, so I don't know. I'm not saying we're sleeping on him, and I don't necessarily know if he's going to start either, because I feel like the starters are going to be Starling, George, Kings at the 3, Freeman at the 4, and Kyle at the 5. But I think Betsy's going to get a lot of run, whether it's at small forward, power forward. I don't know if he's going to play center, but I think he'll get a decent amount of run. I think he'll be one of the first people off the bench. I don't know where Sadiq White will fall in that arena, where Cayenne, Luke Fennell, some of the other guys. We'll see. But I think, Donnie Freeman and J.J. Starling run this team, and they should. Starling's been there for 3 years as a senior, after 1 year at Notre Dame, and Donnie Freeman, he's only a sophomore, but he's the other returnee, and he was a McDonald's All-American and top 10 national prospect, and he was having a solid year, at least offensively, until he got injured last year. So, and they were both at the ACC tip-off, and they're going to run this team in terms of leadership, and Nate George is going to be the floor general and Kings and all that, but Betsy, look for him to have a solid role. What do y'all, just so I'll wrap up here, and I appreciate you tuning in, but what do you think? Who do you think are going to be the starters for Syracuse, at least at the onset of the 2025-26 season? And who do you think will be like because I don't know how deep the rotation will be as they get, deeper into the season, but the next couple of guys off the bench. Like for me, I feel like it's the 5 I named, and then, I don't know. Like I could see the next 3 guys being Cayenne, Sadiq, and Betsy. But then you've also got like some older guys like Ibrahim Souare, who's I think a redshirt sophomore now. He's a big man from Georgia Tech. Didn't play a lot last year, but he's older. You got Bryce Zafir from Montana State. I don't know how much he's going to play either. I'm just blanking on what year he is, but he's older. But he's a veteran player. Luke Fennell, the freshman guard who played in the NBL, which is a professional league in Australia and New Zealand. He's a freshman, but he's been playing against some pro guys. So could he get some run? So let me know what you think the starting 5 will be, and then the next 3 to 4 guys off the bench. And I'm pumped for Syracuse basketball. We'll definitely get into more Syracuse football soon, but with the bye week and whatnot, I'm just kind of pumped for basketball. So let me know what you thought about today's show, what you want to hear about, what you like, what you don't like, how awful I am, how amazing I am, or something, hopefully in between. I appreciate you tuning in. This is Neil Adler with gotta have fun with this. This is Neil Adler with Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. Really appreciate the support, friends. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and I will talk to you again tomorrow on Friday. Take care.